Jimmy, how important do you think, like, it doesn't come up that much. I think we usually do a segment in the Stanley Cup playoff preview, but like for the drought to end in this country, regardless of any team, like
Mhm.
just to get something cooking for a Canadian team to win the Stanley Cup, like where do you put that as far as importance? Do you think somebody needs it? The country needs it?
Yeah, I do. Oh, and it'll be really interesting when it gets. Let's say it's the Leafs or the Oilers or whoever gets to a Stanley Cup final at some point, and it's within the grasp because most. I'm really interested to see how the nation reacts because we're not really a collective hockey nation except when the Olympics happen, whenever they go, which isn't very often, but it's really just 7 different hockey nations. And I think for the most part, all the other fan bases are just going to be super jealous and angry at the one that wins it. But maybe not. Maybe it's been so long that, look, Leafs fans aren't going to be happy if it's the Habs. Flames fans aren't going to be happy if it's the Oilers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think it's gotten so long now that I think there would be some sort of national relief. Like the math on this, and you need, Jonas or somebody who's better at that stuff than me, but like it's really insane. What is the how many years is it now?
30 years now. 93 Habs.
Okay, so 93 to have 7 out of for a while it was 30, now it's 32. It's basically a quarter of the league, right? So essentially a Canadian team should win the Stanley Cup just in pure math every 4 years, right?
Yeah.
Basically a quarter of 25% of, so every 4 years a Canadian team should win the Stanley Cup. And for that to be, that's a massive statistical anomaly for it to not happen for that long. I mean, if you rolling dice or whatever, to have that combination not come up for 30 years. So, is there something to it? I think maybe there is with the pressure in Canadian markets and such, but man, it's got to end in the next, let's say, 5 years.
Yeah.
I just think somewhere along the way, everything falls into place for somebody, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's going to be Toronto, but for somebody, I just think, kind of like, you get like Florida last year is a bad example because they didn't win, but everything kind of fell into place to get them to the Stanley Cup final. And some years it just everything just works. And I think that's bound to happen for a Canadian team at some point here.
Yeah. And it's such a level of desperation. Like all anyone's asking for is one. Yet you look at Pittsburgh, Chicago, LA, Tampa, like
multiple.
Exactly. Like, why is it just get one and then the country can breathe because it finally happened? And the narrative...
is it stupid crazy that Edmonton won one and then 2 years later the Leafs and then 5 years later Ottawa or Montreal did again?
Exactly. Or a dynasty.
Vancouver. Vancouver. 3 cups in 4 years. I don't know. Something. Give us something.
Why not?
Well, and then we had that run, when I first started hosting hockey, we had that run where, Calgary got to the final and came that close against Tampa. And then Edmonton got to the final against Carolina, which was a very winnable Stanley Cup. And then Ottawa got there against Anaheim. There was back-to-back Canadian teams getting chances, and then it just went dry for an awful long time. So, and I tell you, when I was most depressed about it was way back when. And I think it was Anaheim. No offense to the Ducks or their fans, but I remember the Ducks winning the Cup against Ottawa in 5 games in Anaheim. And, we did our hits or whatever for, half an hour after the game and then walked out of that rink. And there was not a single person around. Now, that says something a little bit more about the location of the rink in Anaheim and such, but there are bars and such around that area, and there was nobody there. Everybody went in and cheered like crazy that they won the Stanley Cup, and then everybody went home.
That is crazy, though. That is weird, eh?
It was weird, and it was the same for Carolina in 6, although, again, we tried to go to a bar after we'd done our work, and nothing was open at midnight, and they just won the Stanley Cup. And as a Canadian hockey fan, that just, drives you, again, no offense to either of those fan bases. The fans all went nuts, and I'm sure they went home and were happy, but it's just when you think about what it would be like in any of the Canadian cities, it's mega. Like when Ottawa won 1 game in that Stanley Cup final, they basically shut the entire downtown down, and it was like Canada Day times 10 that one night when they won 1 game on the way to losing the Cup final in 5. So that, I think that's the frustrating part, is when it happens, it's going to be fantastic, and it's one of these cities. All these cities deserve it to happen at some point.